Badadu Wiradjuri Gibi Diramadilinya Badu Wiradjuri. I'm a Wiradjuri man and proudly a Wiradjuri man. Now the Yindyamarra mine, Wiradjuri mine, Darawal mine. I want to pay respects to my ancestry, my mother's Gamilaroi people, my father's Wiradjuri people, and my great-great-grandfather from the Darawal people. It's so nice to be here today and to look out at all of you, and to pay my respects as well to Brother Paul for that beautiful welcome to your country, and how special it is to sit around a fire and to know that we're meeting here as people have done for countless generations, to come together to find ourselves in each other. And your welcomes in our language mean so much, Paul, because they open a space for all of us to find ourselves in each other. My cousin Kerry Johnson is here tonight, and it's so beautiful to see her here, to know that in Kerry, that our great-grandparents are alive, and that we come from a strong family that have survived the worst of Australia, but have responded with a love and a kindness and a generosity that says we will not be defined by the worst of our history. I want to pay respects to my nephew, Kuio Young, who's here tonight from Hawaii, whose father was a friend of mine and a proud native Hawaiian who fought for the recognition and sovereignty of his people in his country, and to have him here tonight is very special for me. And to have all of you here from the lands that you've travelled as well, and my respect to all of you and your people, and the stories that have brought you here to be with us tonight. I wanted to begin with a beautiful experience that I'd had just a couple of weeks ago, back on Wiradjuri country. I'd woken as I do in the early hours before dawn, and I was walking along the creek, crossing a bridge. And I'd been told for a long time that this creek housed a family of platypus. But the platypus are the strangest and most shy of mammals and don't reveal themselves to us easily. I'd looked in that creek time and time again, hoping I'd catch a glimpse. And this morning, the full moon was shining on the creek, lighting up the water. And without thinking, without looking, I heard a splash. I peered over the side of the bridge, and there was the platypus dancing in the moonbeam. I thought in that moment that I'd glimpsed God. That I'd glimpsed God in a moonbeam on my country. For what is God? God is not some idea of some supernatural figure existing in the heavens, but God is, as Thomas Aquinas said, ipsum esse, the act of existence itself. That platypus was reveling in the glory of its own existence, diving in and out of the water in the light of a moonbeam. How perfect. And how perfect a reminder to me that the human being is not the limit of the world. We may think as humans, and we've been told as humans, that we have dominion over all. But that comes with an enormous responsibility to all. And if we think that the human being is the limit of existence, then we will see the limits of the human. I've moved back onto country in recent times. I felt this desire to return to the place that I was raised on. There's a changing of the guard in our family. For Kerry and I, we're seeing our elders pass away. And we know that we're being called to accept the responsibility that falls to us now, to make sure that our people have a place in this world. That to be a Wiradjuri person means something in the world. Going back to country has reconnected me to the lessons of my ancestors and to the words of my father, without whom I would not be here. without whom very few of us would speak the language that Brother Paul spoke tonight. And he told me about Yindyamarra and what Yindyamarra means. That Yindyamarra is not about who we are, but about where we are. Not who we are, but where we are. Think about that. I've lived in a world and I've reported a world as a journalist for 40 years that has told us what happens when we define ourselves by who we are. Every conflict that I have reported, from Africa to the Middle East, to the wars of the Balkans, to the troubles of Northern Ireland, to Afghanistan, to Pakistan, to terrorism throughout Southeast Asia, every conflict that I've reported on, every bloodied marketplace that I've stood in, every grieving mother that I've seen is rooted in that question. Who are you? Who are you might be the most dangerous question we can ask. Who are you? Catholic or Protestant? Who are you? Sunni or Shia? Who are you? Hutu or Tutsi? Christian or Muslim? North Korean, South Korean? Who are you? Who are you is tearing at the fabric of our world. But Yindyamarra says, where are you? When my father said that to me, I'd asked him, why do you teach our language to non-Aboriginal people? And he said, son, because the language is where we are, not who we are. That the people on our land are our people. No matter where they've come from, no matter what has happened here, they are our people. He said, Yindyamarra is about being responsible, not just for what you do, but for what other people do. That's a revolutionary idea. We live in a world where we choose our sides. We point the finger of blame. We claim a moral superiority. We divide up history into villains and victims. But to truly say that I am responsible not just for what I do, but for what you do, changes the relationship between us. Terrible things have happened to my people on my country. This year marks 200 years since the declaration of martial law against the Wiradjuri people in Bathurst, where my ancestors were shot and killed with the protection of the law. That happened on my country. How can I be responsible for that? I'm not responsible for the worst, but I live with its consequences. And I know that if we cannot find ourselves in each other, regardless of what has happened in our history, then we can't build a future. That does not mean that we don't remember. It does not mean that we don't commemorate. But it does say that we have to recognise that in a world where that violence continues, where we have created new ways of slaughtering each other, that we have a responsibility for that. We are implicated in that. Yindyamarra calls us to a deep respect, a quietness, a silence. It's something that's mirrored in other cultures. Our Irish friends here tonight would know of the ashling. The idea of a silence that connects you to a deep past. In other parts of Australia, they talk about dadiri. Dadiri, a deep listening to where we are. Simone Weil, the great French philosopher, passed away at the age of 34, having fled the Nazi occupation of her native country. Died of tuberculosis while refusing any more food than that which was rationed to the members of the French resistance. and died in a weakened state. And Simone Weil once said, "What human beings require is silence and warmth." Silence and warmth. But what they receive is the icy pandemonium. Think about that. More than 70 years ago, she described the world as an icy pandemonium. And that description seems more apt today than ever. A world that is cold and brittle and harsh and loud and chaotic. Look around our world today. So many conflicts that Pope Francis has said we are effectively in World War III. A world where we are damaging our environment almost beyond repair. Where sadly the violence amongst families and amongst sexes continues. Where sadly we see people dispensable, cast aside. Criminal levels of wealth inequality that is eating at the fabric of our societies and destroying the promise of democracy. Democracy Freedom House now tells us is in retreat. 16 straight years of declining freedom and democracy in our world, and amongst democracies themselves. A loss of intimacy. A loss of the silence and the warmth that is required to find ourselves in the other. Each year, in the Yindyamarra Fire Side Oration, a speaker will be asked to respond to that provocation. What human beings require is silence and warmth, and what we receive is the icy pandemonium. This year I wanted to talk about Yindyamarra as an answer to the icy pandemonium. And I have to confront what we experienced in Australia over the past year. In the lead up to the referendum on the voice, and a vociferous, brutal, political debate campaign that we felt as First Nations people deeply in our souls, and that so many of us, myself included, felt damaged by. That this was not just a judgment on whether we had a voice to Parliament, but very much a judgment on us as a people. We experienced the icy pandemonium of a world in which the media seeks only conflict and politicians seek only victory. And we lost something. We lost the ability to speak to each other. I've had to ask myself hard questions in the months since the referendum. Like many First Nations people involved in that campaign, I entered into a profound period of silence. Words were not enough. No felt like the final word. But silence is not non-speech. Silence is a language unto itself. Silence allows us to create the space to hear the other. And when I consider my own role, I have to be honest and say that there are times when I have not allowed myself to hear the other. That sometimes being right, sometimes feeling as if you have the facts on your side is not enough. Sometimes the truth is not enough. To speak truth, particularly the hard truths of our country, without love, without generosity, without kindness, without Yindyamarra, is only going to risk more hostility. It wasn't enough to speak the truth of the worst of what has happened here. we needed to first find a way to embrace. Embrace even those who don't want to hear. Embrace even those who may want to deny the truth. Without the embrace, how can we possibly begin the work of the love and generosity required for forgiveness? And without forgiveness, how can we possibly begin the work required for atonement? And without atonement and forgiveness and love, how can we possibly begin the work of building a future? Over the past year, as I've considered my own response to the voice, it has led me on my own journey. A journey into something sacred, something spiritual, a truth beyond the human being. And that is that as Aboriginal people, as a Wiradjuri person, our place on this earth comes from Bayami, our God. And that is the God of creation, the God of all creation, regardless of what name we use. That our place on this earth comes with a divine purpose. We know that religion can often be at the heart of so much of the conflict of our world, and so many wars that I've reported on. Religion is part of the brittle identities that seek exclusion rather than embrace. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the platypus in the moonbeam. I'm talking about the trees that we're gathered under tonight, this fire that is here. That the human being is a divine creation. That the rocks and the rivers that we sit upon and drink from on our land are part of a divine creation. That's the essence of where we are and not who we are. There was a poem that I read by a Narrabeen man from Western Australia, David Maljali. And he sought his own silence and warmth in a brittle world of icy pandemonium. In his poem he said, "Once I was past and future. Now I am only present today. And it is hard to bear with no past and no future." I think more than anything since the referendum that has spoken to me. Once I was past and future. He didn't say he had a past and a future, but that he was past and future. He belonged to a continuum, an endlessness, an eternity of a divine creation that tied him to his ancestors and all of those who would come after. It was a place beyond time itself. And now he was trapped in an endless today. The horror of being stripped of that divine creation that sits at the heart of what it is to be a First Nations person, and to be trapped within time, trapped within history, always fighting the forever wars, always fighting the wars of identity, of us and them. We know where a world of who we are leads. We know where a world of identity leads. And we know that the only antidote to that is to empty ourselves for the other, is to gaze into the water and watch a platypus dance in the moonbeam and sit under these trees tonight around this fire and know that we are where we are. Some people might hear this and they might think that this is all some sort of Pollyanna-ish utopian idea of love and kindness and forgiveness and has no place in the real world. But I'd rather live in that world, the world of possibility, love, kindness and hope, than the world that we've created without it. I'd rather live in the world where the idea of God or Bayami is not something we sneer at, but something we know is the divine in all of us. I've felt that when I've gazed at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and marvelled at Michelangelo's painting, the outreached hands of Adam and God that never touch. And in that moment, see the possibility of all that we are. In that space between the outreached hands of the divine and the human is all of our potential, all of our possibility, our love, our hate, our kindness, our generosity, our sadness, our sorrow, our joy, our history, all of it. And know that we are here on this planet together. And that the alternative is to divide ourselves up into our warring tribes and tear each other to pieces. That's not the answer for my people. It's not what I learned from my people. It's not what I learned from my father. It's not in the language that Paul spoke to us tonight in. We are a people of love. We are a people of kindness. And love and kindness are not weakness. Love and kindness may be the hardest thing that we can do in the face of the history that sits between us. And that's our offering. That's what Yindyamarra is about. That's what the Yindyamarra Nullaway initiative here at Charles Sturt University is about. We know what the world of the icy pandemonium is. But how about trying a place where we can gather around a fire? Where we can root ourselves in where we are and find the human in each of us. That before we speak, before we ask anything of the other, that we offer the other the love and respect and the generosity required to hear those truths. Let them do the division on the hill. Let the media revel in its conflict. But let's find a space on our country where we can find each other. This is a call to everyone to join us here at Charles Sturt University as part of this initiative to find a better way. To be able to come together at events like this, to be able to bring people together for conversation, people with vast disagreements, but seed that ground with love and respect so that we can first hear the other before we speak. Yindyamarra is my father's answer to the world of the icy pandemonium. Human beings require silence and warmth. Every morning I'll get up on my country and I'll peer into that river and I'll hope to see a platypus dancing in the moonbeam and be reminded that the human being is not the limit of the world. In my language, Mandanguru. Thank you.